Hey everybody, I am going to review the time-lapse of this piece that I did. So this is the Virgin Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe, stepping on the Santa Muerte. So this was a commission from a requester who I presume to be Mexican. I don't know why they would request this if they weren't Mexican. But I did learn a lot and connect with this piece in a way. Again, it was just a commission. It was the first of its kind. So I just put up a new listing on Fiverr about drawing the saints. I wrote on Fiverr, I will draw your favorite Catholic saint. Now this person requested he wanted the Blessed Virgin Mary stepping on the Santa Muerte. So what I learned about the Santa Muerte is that it is this skeletal figure with like sort of this Grim Reaper looking figure. Except instead of the Grim Reaper, who we might see as male or genderless, it's specifically a feminine skeleton, a lot of times portrayed with like makeup or flowers, or a female skeletal looking body. But this person requested Our Lady. He didn't specifically request Our Lady of Guadalupe, but I thought regarding the Santa Muerte is oftentimes like depicted with like those little light rays that emerge from the Lady of Guadalupe. I thought I might draw her. Now, as this piece was evolving, as you might have heard in the previous videos if you were watching the time lapses, when I was drawing this, I was really debating, should I try to attempt drawing the Lady of Guadalupe? And I felt unworthy at first. I felt like I shouldn't. I don't know if I could do that. I consider the Lady of Guadalupe, is it an image created by God? Was it a miraculous image? And I thought it's so perfect. If it's considered to be like a perfect image, I felt like I could never do it justice, and so I sort of shied away from it. But after I finished it, I actually got a comment on one of the YouTube videos saying, and also I posted it on Reddit. So I think it was just comments from Reddit. I don't remember if it was a YouTube video or a Reddit comment, but they said, you should try to promote the Lady of Guadalupe. And this particular image represents a spiritual battle going on in Mexico, where the worship of death might be remnant of, the ancient Aztec or Mayan cultures. And it's very interesting timing for me, really interesting timing, considering my current connection with like the Spanish language and with Mexican Catholics. So, as some of you know, I recently painted my local church, the mural at my local church. Holy Family Parish is what it's called, and they've been around for I think 17 years now in my local community. And what I learned only recently is that their vibrant Mexican Spanish-speaking community is much larger, it seems, than the English-speaking community here, and very active. They have a lot of food events. They show a ton of support for the parish. They have a lot of quinceañeras at the parish, stuff like that. And the thing about me is that I work at a retail store where half of our community speaks Spanish, and I learned Spanish for 4 years in high school. And that's just high school Spanish. And I failed senior year Spanish. I was not a very good student at all. I was not diligent at all. But it's amazing how much basic parts of the language I had retained. And nowadays, I've kind of hopped into Duolingo a little bit, just to review things. I've hopped into some new apps. One of them is called Memrise. That one's pretty nice. It kind of goes over more slang phrases, or more like, just kind of more vernacular. I've just been practicing the language a lot at the retail store with the apps. I can talk a lot about iPhones and iPads and, some of the processes that happen when selling an iPhone. And it's all about comprehensible input, right? When people talk about learning a language, they say that the one main factor is comprehensible input. You can do your conjugations, you can do your flashcards, however it is you want to understand the language, they will all probably work as long as there is that one factor of comprehensible input. If I can understand some pieces of it, I can get the context, I can learn more words, and I can sort of add. So for me, the context has mostly been like selling iPhones, I guess. But I would love to be able to speak about my faith more in Spanish. And what's one thing I know how to say? La Virgen de Guadalupe. I can say that. And I've asked a couple of Spanish customers, are you Catholic? Oh, you know about the local church? Well, I painted the mural there. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And some of them have even checked it out. So that, that's kind of a fun part of the job, where I can connect with a lot of Spanish speakers. And particularly, I would love to connect with, Mexican Catholics in this great spirituality, which is very strong in that country. much stronger there in Mexico, at least population-wise, at least in percentage of the population, than here in the U.S. Obviously, Mexico being a region, a nation that was conquered and occupied by Spain, just like where my family comes from, the Philippines. So we kind of share that regard, where there was a lot of Spanish occupation. And say what you want about that, say what you want about the destruction of indigenous populations and their customs, which is very sad and very evil. But and the loss of culture, we mourn that. But the turning on the light for people to be drawn to the ways and teaching and life and connection to Jesus Christ, body, soul, and divinity, very valuable to me. And for us Catholics, and I've been speaking with some of my Christian friends about this, and how a lot of Christians don't really agree with this, but we love our Blessed Mother. People will argue us saying we worship the Blessed Mother, say we pray to that we pray to the Blessed Mother, and even just today I had a conversation with one of my coworkers, which I'll talk more about in another video, about praying to the saints and stuff like that. But with this, it's a very, very Catholic image, specifically a Mexican Catholic image. We have a spiritual battle of, a depiction of the Virgin Mary, the Virgin of Guadalupe, stepping on the Santa Muerte. Notice I haven't even really been talking about the art process here as you're watching it. I have sort of dove into a new process that I have, where I use the soft airbrush to erase the line art, rather than just constantly using the new layers. I think for this one I was using different layers, and sometimes I will still make a new layer and go into a different brush or line art. But for this one, I think I was still sort of transitioning into that. But my process for lines is getting a lot better as I go, as I'm trying to work more in Procreate. Still transitioning from Krita, the free software that I use for Windows, which is really, really amazing software. There's still some things in Krita that are superior, at least in my workflow, to Procreate, or I just need to continue to refine my workflow in Procreate. I was working in Krita for upwards of 6-7 years. So just after getting my new iPad and working in Procreate for a while, still getting used to the workflow, but my skills seem to be transitioning pretty well into this, as far as especially like line art and illustration goes. I do feel that line art is one of my strong suits. I usually end up making line art that I do feel satisfied with, but it's the coloring process that I'm starting to refine more nowadays, and you can kind of see it in my more recent work. I'm trying to work on moving away from the only 2 or 3 flat values with only hard edges that are seen in anime. It's seen in anime and animation because it's useful, it's quick, it's easy to paint that way. But when it comes to illustration, I want to deepen my skill set a little bit. For work like this, I did go well over time as far as how long I was supposed to take with the piece itself. But when it comes to Catholic work like this, I also plan on selling copies of it in some way, shape, or form. I don't know who would buy this, but it's something I want to do for any of my Catholic pieces. I would want to put them on my online store, opuslilium.com. I actually have to put the www because Google Sites didn't allow me to do what's called a naked domain. I have to put the www, which is kind of annoying, but it's there. So as you can see, the line art's developing here. And all throughout this time, like I said, I'm connecting with the story, and practicing Spanish every day at work. And it's led me to quite a number of things. I've read some Saint Teresa of Avila. I've been to Avila, Spain, where I didn't really have any devotion to Saint Teresa of Avila. I didn't have much connection to the Spanish language at all, besides taking it in high school. But now it's sort of coming together, and I want to read now Saint John of the Cross, who is another Carmelite mystic, just like Saint Teresa of Avila, who wrote a lot about the interior life and mastering that interior life. And I think it's really wonderful for me right now that I'm being led to Saint Teresa and John of the Cross, because they are definitely a breakaway for me from what I grew up in, which is this a Catholic ministry, but also a charismatic Catholic ministry, with a lot of songs and worship and praise, a lot of fun and games. And for me, for a long time, that's what religion was to me, because I found, the church service as a child to be boring. And then when we found something more exciting, for me as a young teen, I'm like, okay, I'll dive into this. And for me, that's what my Catholic faith was. I didn't really even know what it meant that well to be Catholic. And it's wonderful that I was brought into the faith through that ministry, brought closer to Jesus. But it wasn't until adulthood that I started realizing, oh, okay, this is what the saints are, this is what Mary is. And I think in my young adulthood, my early 20s, I started actually really wondering, okay, what are the answers here? What is the truth here? And sort of started learning about the Catholic faith and learning. But it's only until now, well into my 30s, definitely a late bloomer here. We have 11-year-old saints. We have we have Saint Maria Goretti. We have people who lived the Catholic life very well, and we lived powerful, loving, sacrificial lives at a young age. But that's not me. I lived as a sinner for most of my years. For all of my years, really. I'm still a sinner. But learning about the faith and diving deep into the catechism and the teaching, and only now starting to actually convert a little bit, like move away from sin and into the life and teachings of Jesus. And I'm still reeling from that conversation I had with my coworker earlier, who was talking to me about the Bible. He was Catholic, really dove into the Bible, and became more of a non-denominational Christian who is focused on Bible study, which I think is still wonderful. And I think, I didn't want to debate with him. I'm not an apologist. I'm not a theologian. I still, firmly believe in the Catholic faith, and he doesn't. But I didn't want to get into debates because what he was leading me toward was more of just toward the Bible. Like, read the Bible. The Jesus of the Bible has the truth. The Bible has the truth, and you can't really go wrong going in there. I mean, you can in a way, because I do listen to Bishop Barron too, and he says you can't just read the Bible willy-nilly. You have to know what you're reading. You have to know that there is genre. There are different types of genres in the Bible. Some can be taken literally, some are historical, some can be taken more as interpretive, and we have thousands of years of church traditions and theologians and Bible readers, debating about how to live the faith. So I think I don't want to necessarily move away from any denomination and deconstruct the faith, but kind of going in that direction, but not really. Why split up when ultimately all Christians want to be unified under the one kingship of Christ, right? So if I meet a non-denominational Christian who is encouraging me to read the Bible because the Jesus of the Bible has the truth, he is right. If he wants to talk to me about Catholic doctrine and our practices, he can. And if he wants to question those, these are questions that have arisen throughout the life of the entire Christian church. And these, who knows, they could be open debates. Maybe we have something wrong. Again, I'm not a priest, I'm not a bishop, I'm not a theologian, I'm not here to argue anything. But if after that conversation the fruit is that I go into the Gospel of Matthew and start reading again, then that's good. Then that interaction we had, God can bless. So I want it to be the same thing with my art. I want it to be the same thing with the topics I talk about here on my channel. Again, watching a time lapse, I'm not really talking about the art, but again, I hope you're enjoying the visual process of this. You can see my palettes on the sides where I create my 4-value palette. It's actually 5, but I do 4 because we have the highlight, the general light, like the base color, and then we have a form shadow or core shadow. I try to call it form shadow because it's where the form turns away from the light. And then the in-between value between the it's called midtone. Between the midtone and the form shadow, we have reflected light. But reflected light does not necessarily have to be within the same color scheme. Reflected light comes from whatever surface the light is bouncing off of. That's why I don't include it in the palette, because I can just sort of adjust what the reflected light will look like. As you can see, I'm doing color adjustments here. I sort of darkened the whole thing a little bit. I think the darkening was good because I wanted to darken it, especially because this image is Mexican, right? Now, Native American, mainland Mexicans, have dark skin, just like us in the Philippines. Us native, if you look more native, you might have darker skin. If you have more of an Asian or a Spanish descent, you might have lighter skin. Maybe, I don't know how genetics, I'm not a genetics guy. But I wanted to darken the skin a little bit to maybe fit a little bit more what might be, a Mexican skin tone. She still looks pretty light-skinned here, but of course the light is emitting from around her and within her. But I had another coworker. She said to me, the Lady of Guadalupe is important because she's depicted in the I forgot what it's called, the garment, as a woman of color, is what she said. Now that's important to a lot of people. Mexican. She came to Juan Diego, who was not a Spaniard, but who was a native. So that's really important to them, and I want to capture that. I think that's the end of the time lapse here. There's a lot more I can say about the faith, about the Lady of Guadalupe, and it's interesting the way my channel has gone. Here we're looking at art, we're talking about art, but I'm also talking about my story with the art. And I think for me, that's what's important, and that's what I'm really trying to move toward. My story as a Christian, and growing as a Christian and as an artist. So y'all, thank you for listening, and thank you for enjoying and watching this little time lapse. I'll talk to y'all later. I'm going to record more of these with some more of the recent work that I've done. But yeah, God bless you all. See you later. Bye-bye.